Welcome back. Another nice, lovely, sensual, epic episode of the 716 Sports Podcast.
Sensual?
Yeah, we got the whole crew here.
When I think of this podcast, I always think about my sensuality. So here we are.
Sensual. And some nice bass tones on this podcast, some deep, low voices. So
yeah.
There we go.
There's that podcast for you.
Now you're hearing the lovely bass tones of our newest addition to the show, Derek Kramer.
It's a sensual show.
This is 76 Sports Podcast After Dark, starting before dark, but also continuing after the dark part.
We got the whole gang here. We got Mike, we got Jeff, we got Steve, and our newest addition, Derek Kramer, who's going to be hanging out with us here for a little while. As long as he wants to stay with us.
Until he gets tired of us.
As long as you'll have me.
You just hear his microphone drop halfway through this segment.
All right, guys, I gotta go.
All right.
He gone.
He gone.
So what's up, man? How you doing? Thanks for coming out, huh?
Well, thanks for having me, man. I mean, it's been a while since I've been here, so appreciate you bringing me back as usual, Justin. It's always a good time to hang out with you guys, and let's get to it. Let's have some fun here.
So we got a good show tonight. We got Joe Yerdon calling the show.
The noted jerk.
We've spoken with Brian Duff to talk about some Sabres.
Justin, we haven't done either of these things yet. You are traveling forward into a place in the future where we've already done these things before the show.
You may or may not have audio issues with Joe.
He's clairvoyant, isn't he?
You may or may not notice that when we quote-unquote introduce Joe to the podcast today.
So as we approach the All-Star break here, we got a bit of a, I guess we'll call it a State of the Sabres type show here.
Yeah, you get the State of the Union from the president once a year. You get the State of the State from the governor, the State of the Township from the elected mayor. I'm kidding. I'm just going down the line.
And then we get the State of the Sabres from the 716 podcast, not from the Sabres.
Yeah, I did the State of my household once, but my wife didn't even listen. So
that's about right.
Yeah.
But speaking of the state of, before we get into anything here, Sabres, I think the natural starting point is we turn to a guy who is around the team all the time and knows a lot about the team. Why don't we start here with our conversation here with Brian Duff?
Welcome back to the 716 Sports Podcast. Joined now by a friend of the show, returning guest, I think for a third stint with us, Brian Duff, taking some time out on his Monday night, and he was very clear in telling me he's got a couple of days off. So what a guy to come on with us during his few days off during the break. Duffer, we always appreciate you giving us some of your time.
Good to be here. What's up, boys?
So we're kind of taking advantage of this blip in the schedule to kind of take some a state of the Sabres, if you will. And the first thing I wanted to talk to you about, we had you on to talk about Coach Kruger, and I think it was Justin that said, fans are concerned because he's a soccer guy. And you talked about his ability to coach a team, his ability to lead men, and his ability to communicate. And so far, no matter what the standings have shown and the point streaks and the slumps have shown, I think the one thing consistent that most people tend to agree with is Coach Kruger is doing a really good job, and he's a pretty good coach, and the players seem to like him, and the media seems to like him. So I won't say you spoke it into fruition, but we do kind of see, we definitely have learned what your point was when you were talking up his ability to communicate and what kind of man he is.
Yeah, and I think from an out-of-towner's perspective, that's where, most visiting media when they're coming into Buffalo are curious about, and then they tend to walk away from their experience in and around Ralph, kind of like we did right from the get-go and have continually now. And I think, the hard part is the results have not changed, and yet there is obviously an awful lot to like about Ralph's approach, and you would have hoped that it could have had a greater positive impact. And therefore, I think, you would then have to look at the roster and say, okay, well, why are the results not changing? And it's just a case of too many of the players on the roster are not having even career average or certainly career best years. And I think anytime you're trying to turn a corner as a group, you need more than just the expected to do their part. And I would say that right now that's not happening.
And you mentioned the roster, and there's the rumblings of Botterill's seat, and I don't think those exist in this room at all. And that's why I'm willing to talk to you about this. I'm excited to see what Botterill can do with this offseason, because I think the term I used in our Slack chat was a cleaner canvas. What can Botterill do to this roster this offseason? And it's not saying he has to wait until then, but it feels like, because if we can all agree that the roster for whatever reason isn't there, it feels like this offseason there might be some potential because of cap room, because of player personnel that are free agents and whatever. It feels like this offseason there can be some changes, and I for one am excited to see what kind of artwork is put together. Not that I want to rush the end of this season by any stretch, but I'm more than willing to give Botterill another offseason and see what can happen.
Well, it's probably not right to answer a question if that was a question with a question of my own, but I'd love to know what people are thinking is going to happen come free agency, because that's not the way to fix things in the NHL. Correct. Unless you're getting Artemi Panarin, and he's available once and the Rangers benefited. And, I just don't see where this potential, it's nice to have cap space, but so often in today's world, it goes to retaining, extending your own guys, because you need to do Reinhart. You need to get Dahlin looked at and taken care of, and not immediately, but you know what I'm saying. And we all know where that's going to go. So I'm sitting here going, I don't see where, that dramatically changes anything at this point in time. I mean, most people were expecting it last July, and the biggest problem is they still don't have a number 2 center. So, it's a wait and see for me on what the summertime and especially July 1st can ultimately bring for this group. Yes, they're going to be in a better position from a dollars standpoint. Yeah. But, if they don't show a dramatic improvement here in the second half, then you have to assume then that means you have a lot of areas to address. And I just don't know if that all comes to fruition the way people are hoping, just because they have some cap space.
So the other part of it too is with the offseason, I think everyone is excited. I want to jump into Dylan Cousins. So he had a great juniors. We talk having no clue of what the organization is thinking, and not saying that you in theory know more than us, but it feels like, regardless of how the second half of this season goes, we should at least see Cousins for 9 games. And second, how excited are you for that prospect? You talk about a number 2 center. That's honestly what triggered this question in my head, because my first 2 thoughts are either Casey Middlestat figures it out or Dylan Cousins is ready to fill that role come October next year.
But more realistic is neither, and then what are you doing? No, honestly.
That's the age-old question now.
Okay, you said last time you weren't going to answer a question with a question. You did it again, and I don't know how to answer that.
No, I think, sure, you could hope that Cousins is ready to play in the NHL, but he's not ready to play number 2 center. And I would suggest that Casey's not going to be there either. And that doesn't mean he's not going to be on the team. But, I mean, the Amerks are in a terrible place right now, almost to the point where, and again, it's, just past midway like we are in the NHL, but 7 straight losses has put them in a position where they're a couple of points away from missing the playoffs despite having a winning percentage over .600. That's just the nature of the division they're in. So, they need to get it figured out real quick so that players that are still learning down there, like Middlestat, and obviously Asplin's back there now, and one would assume, based on potential for players to come back healthier with the Sabres, that Asplin might stay there for a while now too, which is fine. They need a really good finish to the year and a substantial, as opposed to the last 3 years, playoff run. And, that's where these guys, especially Middlestat, I think could, benefit from. So again, I'm all for these young players, but we're seeing that you need to have somewhere in between them and Jack Eichel, or even someone older than Eichel. I mean, Johansson's there. I get it. And I'm not diminishing what he's brought to the team. I would still do that signing every day of the week. I think, he's a guy that at his best can go on these runs where you're just like, wow, this is an amazing acquisition. But the real picture is he's truly not a centerman. He can help your team. He's likely to be around 40 points, which is kind of where it's trending, but they just need more around it, right? So they've still got to find a way to get a bona fide number 2 center, in my opinion.
Duffer, one of the biggest things that's intriguing with me about Ralph Krueger is his constant usage of the 11 and 7 and being able to take this roster and try to flip it in a way that can be most effective as possible here. You know you have a glut of defensemen. You know that you have a lot of injuries at forward, so Krueger's trying to make the most of it with this. Mm-hmm. Even with the return of Jeff Skinner and Victor Olofsson, when those guys return to the lineup, do you still see that being employed until probably the NHL trade deadline?
It's a tough question because it wouldn't take too many more moves on the blue line to make you think that you'd just go back to having 6 defense on a regular basis. And for whatever reason, I tend to be gravitating towards that I'd rather see 6 than 7, even though the win-loss record is slightly above 500 right now when employing 11 and 7, which means that for the season, the reason they've been able to be a little bit above 500 from a points percentage standpoint is because of the games they've employed 11 and 7. I can't sit here and tell you that they've been dramatically better in those games. They've just gotten a slightly better result. So not enough to honestly even compare the two or, talk up one approach, talk down the other approach. I think it is what it is. There's nothing dramatically different. It's just, I really would like to see consistent pairs for Dahlin and for Jokiharju at this point in time to perhaps stabilize their development and have a built-in trust. And Ralph Krueger kind of diminished the question when I asked it to him within the last 2 weeks. He feels like the teaching that goes on off the ice within the group should allow all the guys to be comfortable playing with whoever they're out there with. So obviously a 7 employment instead of 6 is going to lead to, more partner changes throughout the course of a game. But, I don't know how to judge kind of where the group is at from the whole production by the defense right now. They're 10th in the league in points by defensemen, which is a good number. I think anytime you're in the upper half, you have to, tip the cap on that. They're 14th in goals by defensemen. But I'm sitting here looking at Rasmus Dahlin, who's only got 3. He had 9 last year. And I think there's more to give. And Dahlin is always his own worst critic when it comes to his shot and his need to get better. And I think until Dahlin gets in that place where he truly believes he's got a weapon, I think he's holding his own game back a little bit. And I know that there's guys on that power play unit, and obviously at even strength too, that want the defense to have more of not just a shot mentality, but believe in their shot that it can be a scoring weapon as opposed to just shooting for rebounds, which I felt like was the Housley philosophy, the shot mentality, which you hear from Krueger just in different words. And it's not wrong. It's just, I want this group of defensemen, which I think can give even more offensively, to believe in what their abilities are. So, and again, it would tie in with the lack of offense that you have from the forwards, right? So, it's all clearly still a work in progress, but I think we're almost at a point where you're hoping that the defense makes up for a little bit of the shortcomings up front.
So we mentioned Sam Reinhart a bit ago. He's a bit of an interesting case. And before the season started, Botterill mentioned his ability to drive his own line. We haven't seen that yet this year, and
no.
There is a need for a number 2 center. Does it make sense to give it a few games? Has that boat sailed? And what do you think his contract looks like at the end of this offseason?
I feel like it has sailed, because if it hadn't, we probably would have and should have seen it by now. I think it's easy to understand why he has not really moved around too much. And I think the production has been consistently there when he plays with Jack. And, I don't know if I'm going to go as far as to say he's a perfect complement to Eichel, but he's pretty darn close. And you shouldn't, disparage the numbers that he puts up playing with Jack, because I think he does an awful lot, to again, complement. And those are things that all teams look for. The contract, boy, I would think that, if it was wishful thinking, I think you'd want to be getting it done now. And try to hope that you're in and around the range of 6.5 to 7.5, I guess. I mean, I think in the offseason, you always get kind of blown away by some of the numbers that are out there. But then when you see other extensions happen, you go, oh, well, that's almost more applicable to our guy. And I think it's not that this is, an arbitration situation, but I think with any player, you can pick and choose your comparables. And that's kind of why I would tend to gravitate towards that kind of a number for Sam. I know at some point people were worried it was going to go an awful lot higher, but I think realistically, that should be kind of in the range that we're talking about. But I'm certainly not speaking from, a position of authority or inside knowledge on that one.
So one last question here before we let you go back to enjoying your time off here on the Sabres bye week into the All-Star break. They sit here today, 51 points. That's 6 behind Toronto and Florida, 7 behind Philly, 8 behind Carolina, very much chasing going into the All-Star break. Do you think that this team, now the road isn't easy to get there, is this still a team that can find its way to a playoff spot? And if so, what would be the difference for them heading back into playing here in a week and a half or so?
Well, the easy one is they've got to be a lot better on the road, where they're 26th right now. The good news is it's home heavy coming out of the break with 8 out of 10, where they've been very good this year. They're slightly behind last year's pace, which might be hard for some to believe, but the free fall happened after. I mean, it was already starting, but it really kicked in after the All-Star break last year when the club only won 9 of its last 34 games. I think it's fair to assume that most people would not expect that again. So take advantage of the home schedule. And if in that time, and you have to remember that they're in a small window here where they're sitting, and there's teams like Florida and Carolina and Columbus, accruing some extra games, if you will. So they'll make that up on the backside of the All-Star break with the home heavy schedule. So, maybe they can come through that home run within 4 or 5 points of a playoff spot, maybe more. But I think realistically, when you're talking about that many teams directly in front of them, it's unlikely that you're going to close the gap significantly on all of them. They score more than they did last year, but they also give up more. So they have to find a way to be better defensively. A lot of that has come on the road. The one thing that you guys led with tonight was the coach. And the one reason why I think they are better and better prepared for games is also the most troubling stat for me, is that I think this team tends to start games, especially at home, really, really, really well. But they don't often get the result. We have seen so many first periods this year where the Sabres should have had multi-goal leads coming out of those periods. Sometimes they end up trailing, often they're tied. And I just think that is such an unfortunate waste, if you will, of good game plans. So for me, they need to find traction earlier in games and then somehow, harness what we saw in the Dallas game, which was arguably their best third period of the year. And sadly, they didn't follow it up properly against Nashville, a team that is on the ropes, is terrible special teams wise, and they lost the special teams battle on both fronts. And they have let too many games in the last 3 to 4 weeks slip away, especially when tied, sometimes when leading, but mostly when tied going into the third period. And I know that may not sound like a big deal, but this club was really good for a while at finding a way to at least get a point. They have lost that ability right now. They have let games slip when they don't. I mean, they're 6.5 minutes away from getting at least a point in Nashville, which, 3 out of 4 on that trip would have been good. But to come away with nothing, those are the things that have to, so there's so many things here, right, that need to improve. They're not great against their own division. They're okay. They've got 10 games left against the Atlantic. The Metro is a better division. They've got 14 games left against the Metro. That could kill them, to be quite honest with you, because I think those opponents are high quality. They've got 9 games left against the West, which has been, where they've been better this year. So I don't know how you want to choose to slice it up. They just have to be better in every facet, right? And you have to hope that whoever plays with Skinner when Jeff returns can ultimately, even if it's only for 25 games out of the 33 that are left, like they've got to have a secondary scoring line behind Eichel. It's that simple. You just can't count on Jack's line to be the only line. And I know there've been some guys chipping in here and there lately, but it's not been consistent enough. And and look, there was a stretch last year where I think Jeff scored 26 times in 33 games. Even if he gets 20, which would be huge, imagine what that could do to this group going down the stretch. So are some pieces there that could help? Yes. Will they add others? That remains to be seen.
Yeah, they definitely need to get healthy. Well, Duffer, we greatly appreciate your time and your insights. You always have great perspectives. You're on a couple of days off and you're pulling numbers out and stats out of where the defensemen rank in goals. So that's awesome. I'm giving you all the kudos for having those numbers off the top of your head. So, Duffer, we appreciate your time. Enjoy a few days off and enjoy the All-Star game. I'm sure you'll be watching, and we'll also look forward to you covering the team down the home stretch. You take care, Duffer.
Sounds good.
And thanks again to Brian Duff, a guy taking his time off. He's got the sabbatical as much as anyone here with the team on their extended break, so appreciate him taking time here on a Monday night, stepping in, talking to us. There's a lot to break down from our discussion there with Duffer. Confidence certainly sounds like it's possible as we come to this natural stopping point of the season and looking ahead to the end. It is certainly possible for the team to make that run that they have to make to find themselves in playoff contention. You talk about what they did last year, winning 9 out of 34. And you hear those numbers again, and they are shocking to think about, living through that season last year, but that's very much what it was. I don't see this team having that bad of an ending, but what do we make, guys, of this group of players? What is the future for the Buffalo Sabres? You open your crystal balls, you put on your glasses, look to the future. What is the future for the Sabres here this season?
I mean, quite honestly, they look like something that I thought they would be during this season. They'll be around, they'll hang around, but then 3 or 4 weeks left, they're going to get eliminated, and it's going to be something like that. But they're actually going to be more entertaining throughout the rest of this. They're going to actually be hanging around in this playoff spot sort of thing. Yeah, Duff brings up the 9 out of 36. First off, thanks for making me relive that nightmare real quick. That I really appreciate it, Duff. And no, the other part of this then being, it just really is, they are what they are. They are going to be a fringe team that might get some excitement going if they hit it hot, and then they'll taper off and eventually be eliminated. They're not a playoff team, but they'll be around where you could say, maybe?
I'm longing for the glorious runs to 9th place when Lindy Ruff was the coach, because at least when you would sit down on March 23rd for a game against the Islanders, it was like, well, if they win this game, they're 3 points out with 6 games to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that hasn't existed in a while.
That could be something they do here.
This is the plight of being a Sabres fan, unfortunately, as much as we love the team. We're not looking at who they'd play in the first round. We're looking at hopefully they're still in the, you just said 3 to 4 weeks to go, they'll be eliminated, and I don't disagree with that, but I hope not. I have tickets to games throughout the rest of the year. I bought a mini pack, so I want to be going to meaningful games at the end of March.
I'm just playing the board game Operation, wondering what Lafreniere can do to himself that'll drop into us but not hamper him too much.
I mean, so what you're saying is you have a pipe in the back of your car.
Hey,
swing to the knee. No,
I hear there's a hockey or guy who's familiar with ice rinks and skates who probably is out of prison for now after the last time he did that. So.
All right, well,
wow, that was 25 years ago.
So I was intrigued by I mean, not because I asked the question, but the cap space. And Duffer was right when he said you don't get better through free agency, which is right. But here's my thought on it. Zach Bogosian is a $5 million cap hit. Evan Rodriguez is a $2 million cap hit because of the arbitration. Excuse me. Goaltending will be, we'll see if they, bring Ullmark back in, what that kind of deal that would be, because he's on a 1-year deal. But here's my thinking. If you take Zach Bogosian and replace him with another player in the NHL who is worth $5 million, you're a better team. I don't mean being paid $5 million. I mean it's worth it. If you take Evan Rodriguez out of this roster and plug in a player who is worth $2 million, I think you're a better team. So in free agency, I think the Sabres will sign some players, but it might be more signings like Curtis Lazar. And I'm not saying if they get 3 more Curtis Lazars, they're a playoff team, but that was a nice signing, and I think he should be in the NHL. So my point is, with this cap space, I'm not saying you go and spend all of it on a big player. I'm saying that what you've afforded yourself is addition by subtraction, because you've now pulled out these players who now make room for either Lawrence Pilot and Dylan Cousins next year, and Tage Thompson if he's healthy. And now you have enough cap space to sign role players, guys who are disenfranchised where they're at. A veteran that might be, at the end of his long term with the team.
Disenfranchised is a good word, because that's what I was thinking too, is you subtract a guy like Rodriguez who has a desire to play more minutes. Even at a $2 million cap hit, he has a desire to play more minutes. What is he going to bring to the team going forward if he's not happy with the situation? Bogosian seems like he's been injured as much as he's been playing, and while at the time he was acquired, it seemed like at least a decent signing, it just hasn't panned out. So it'd be great to get his $5 million off the books and bring in a couple players that are worth a player, or a couple players that are worth the money, instead of having these basically albatross contracts around their neck.
I'd rather have 2 $3 million players who play up to
that contract, by the way.
The Jets.
Don't worry, he's
that was a
Shovel Day off?
Shovel Day off.
That was the trade.
That was a potential laden contract. Like, your ceiling is this, we're going to pay you for that.
He also was a number 2 overall pick.
I feel like he's not been the same since he had that hip surgery, since his recent injury. He's not as fluid, because for a big body, he's a fluid skater, which is what makes him so effective. You haven't seen that at all since he's been back. He's very clunky.
It was that injury he got very early on to his tenure here. I don't think he ever recovered to be what he was in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
And you ask Derek, the orchestrators of that trade are a guy who never worked here and a guy who no longer works here. So they have been very thoroughly thrown under the bus and or got to enjoy the spoils of Manitoba, which I'm sure is a lovely place to play. I mean, you talk about structuring this team and contract values and free agency. The core issue is, and has been since the last time the Sabres made the playoffs, is good teams find good talent. They draft good talent. They find good waiver pickups. They develop good players. They make free agent signings that make sense. You look at the teams that are at the top of the division. Boston has always been a team that has drafted very well and developed players very well. Tampa is a team that has drafted very well and develops their players very well. Buffalo is a team that has drafted very poorly, other than absolute slam dunk players like taking Rasmus. You don't get credit for drafting Jack Eichel and Rasmus Dahlin, because anyone with a pulse and an understanding of the sport of hockey would have drafted Rasmus Dahlin and Jack Eichel. It's everything else. It's drafting Grigorenko and Gergensons and all these other guys who haven't panned out to be the guys that you hope a first-round talent would be. It's signing a Pozo and guys to these big contracts that never live up to it, too.
At the time, again, Pozo was one of those contracts that at the time it looked better than it panned out being.
I'd agree with that. Pozo, it's a raw deal. The injuries really hurt there.
So a lot of the reasons Sabres are in the spot where they are now is like, well, back to what Duff was saying, you're not going to sign free agents, fix this. Half the reason that they're in the spot where they can't make the trades is because they are so cash-strapped. Look at the Scandella for League thing. They traded him out for a bag of pucks and brought him for a league for the same amount of salary. Like, it's once the salary clears out, Botterill has more room to work with the cap, so maybe trades can happen. I'm not opposed to maybe Reinhart's a guy to trade here. He talked about needing number 2 center. Reinhart's not that. We need that. You can find a winger out there. Maybe it's not in the system right now, but maybe trading Reinhart for number 2 center is in the cards.
You keep talking about the cap, and this just continues to pound home for me the need for a soft cap in the NHL, because the hard salary cap, it really, not just because our team has been hurt by it for so long, but it's not fun.
It's like half the league now.
You heard about the Rams when they made all these big signings, and not trying to jump sports here. The Rams GM is like, we can always figure it out. Like, we might look on paper like we're spending twice what the salary cap is, but what we do is we make all these contracts, a signing bonus that shows up as a cap hit in 3 years, and then you either restructure or trade them before that's up, or you you get to carry over unused salary cap from year to year. I know it gets crazy, but a hard salary cap, what it does, like, there's no way Gretzky gets traded in today's NHL. The dude got traded twice, right? Like, it just doesn't happen in today's NHL.
Yes.
Because no one has the cap space to pull it off.
Unpopular opinion maybe in the room. I love the hard salary cap because I think NFL teams get away with absolute murder in terms of avoiding money and burying contracts, non-guaranteed
But how
money
much parity have we had in the NHL? Because it's not there.
Is there more parity in the NHL than there is in the NBA?
Only because more than half the teams only because half the team make the playoffs.
Yeah, but I guess the best comparable is the NBA. Is there more parity in the NBA versus the NHL? I mean, the NBA has a really soft salary cap and really weird, like bird rules for contracts and things like that.
But also only,
Major League Baseball
11,
has
also only 11
soft,
players on the roster.
Well,
which also-
MLB has no salary cap.
Well, they have the luxury tax.
Well, they have a luxury tax, yeah. But I mean, in terms of the New York Yankees could spend the entire GDP of the state of New York if they wanted to.
And the Royals would still go to 2 out of 3 World Series, and they were one of the lowest. So I don't know.
The big thing for me is there's plus and minuses for each of those systems, and I agree. The hard salary cap makes it so that GMs have to be a little more responsible. That's how Vegas gets born into the most successful expansion team of all time. Because these
guys like
teams,
Jonathan Marchessault, they want off the books. Sorry.
Because they have Riley Smith with a terrible contract that they want to give away. So what do? They leave Marchessault exposed so that they have to get that contract off of their books. And you get a first-round pick for taking the likes of David Clarkson's contract. And, here's William Karlsson, too. And then he becomes a 40-goal scorer. It makes it so that GMs have to be responsible. And I think that Jason Botterill is trying to do that. You mentioned Tage Thompson's name, by the way.
We're big on Justin and I are big on Tage.
What a kick to the groin his injury is to that trade. Like, just an extra kick.
Mm-hmm.
It already looked bad. It looked worse when he wins the Conn Smythe.
But Ryan Johnson's going to be really good.
But again,
I'm
just
kidding.
like,
I don't know that.
It's just like, I still like Tage Thompson as a prospect. I liked the pick of Ryan Johnson. I thought if you did get one of those talented forwards there, that might have been probably better for you. But hindsight's always 20/20 in this. But I liked that pick too. But this is just an extra little kick for what was already looking like a deal that you could just beat up on Jason Botterill. Hey, here's one more. Tage Thompson's not playing this year. What the hell?
It's an interesting trade because it all comes down to Tage, and I still don't. Even with Tage, I don't think it was a good trade. I mean, because a lot of what we're seeing right now is the blowback of, okay, we'll take this guy because you don't want that contract. That's why we have Bogosian. They don't want that contract. That's why he's on this team. Now we're dealing with it. That's why we have Sabaka because they don't want that contract. Now we're dealing with it. That's why we had Berglund. Can you imagine where we'd be if we still had Berglund?
Thank every deity.
You probably don't have Jeff Skinner.
This could be worse. You don't have Skinner. Well, you probably don't have Lazar.
You're probably buying him out.
Yeah,
honestly.
Yeah.
You're probably, like, if he was still here at the end of the year, you're probably buying him out.
But you know what the weird fact is? Once he left the team last year, that's when they dropped. That's the weird thing about that.
Same thing with Sabaka getting hurt in Tampa.
That was weird, yeah.
That did lead to some of the slide for sure.
So what this conversation has led me to believe is if the NHL had a soft salary cap, we would be just as fucked because we would have loaded up on more money that would have made this team any better. So the point isn't what the limit is. The point is that we do a really shit job at getting to it.
Botterill could have signed more fourth liners.
Botterill could have signed a 9th or 10th defenseman to keep active.
More money for Gergensons.
Also, that's number 4.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah, hell yeah.
It's a good thing that we talked to Joe Yerdon because we asked him how to fix this.
Yeah.
I think now would be a great time to bring in the very smoothly produced and only one-take interview with longtime friend of the podcast.
We didn't ask Joe Yerdon twice how he would fix the team.
Nope, not at all. Let's talk to Joe Yerdon. Welcome back to the 716 Sports Podcast. Excited to be joined by Sabres beat writer for a website you may have heard of called The Athletic, noted jerk and all-around good guy, friend of the 716 Sports Podcast, Mr. Joe Yerdon, who I totally have not been talking to for the last 10 minutes. Welcome to the podcast, Joe. Happy to have you.
It's great. It feels like it's been forever and a day since I've talked to you guys.
Literally months on end. This is he and I have never heard each other's voices before. This is the first time for everything. And definitely while I was not talking to him, I definitely did not ask him a question about how he would fix the Buffalo Sabres. That I'm definitely not going to re-ask right now because that would be ridiculous. But let's pretend. Let's pretend that I was. Joe, in that event, how would you fix the Buffalo Sabres? What can we do? What's wrong with this team and their 7 defensemen?
Well, yeah, 7 defensemen is probably not great to be running out there in the lineup. That's not a fun way to run a team. Although Tampa sure makes it look fun when they do that. But I guess when you have Nikita Kucherov and Steve Stamkos, all these other guys that score 20 plus goals a season, that makes it a little bit more fun. But yes, I would get one defenseman out of there, and ideally not Lawrence Pilot, who they got out of there by sending him back to Rochester for the bye week and the All-Star break. But you want to get to get the guys that don't want to be there anymore out of there. You want Zach Bogosian moved on. You want Evan Rodriguez sent somewhere else where he's going to be able to play the minutes he wants to play. And you want to get the offense better. The offense has to be better. They don't score enough goals, and that's really tough to swallow when the defense has played, I think, a lot better than I think anybody expected them to this year. And, better defense is good, but you're still kind of being let down by the goaltending. And I don't know if there's really a fix for that right now, unless there's a trade out there that comes out of the blue that maybe works out well. But right now, fix the offense, try to figure out what's going on with the goaltending, and get the guys that don't want to be there gone, and call it a rest of the season there and see how it works.
Joe, you and I have talked about plenty of things in the past with the Sabres, and one of the things that I know is frustrating a lot of us. I mean, we've had these sorts of conversations in the past, maybe even sometimes as recently as minutes ago.
Rumor has
it, but I wouldn't ask something about Zach Bogosian again. And you mentioned the players that didn't want to be here, like Evan Rodriguez and Zach Bogosian. You want to see this team be able to make some trades, and a lot of the question has been, Joe, what is taking them so long to get something done? You are a cap team, you have problems, and I am sick of seeing Zach Bogosian ruin my chances at points right now because of how he's become noticeable in what happens in the defensive end and sticking out like a sore thumb sometimes.
Yeah, it's. I think it's a tough spot because Zach doesn't want to be there, and he's playing over Colin Miller, which I know is driving everybody crazy. But at the same point, I mean, Colin Miller could make it really easy to keep Zach Bogosian out of the lineup if he was playing to his utmost potential. I mean, we know he can, but it's just a matter of doing it. And I think when he does get sat out, I think there's things that Ralph and the coaches are seeing that maybe we're not, and that those are questions that we got to hope that maybe one day they'll want to answer to us. But this is the kind of thing where they're trying to find a way to get these guys to another home, and it's really tough. I mean, you've got 18 to 20 teams that are $2 million or less away from the cap, and Zach Bogosian costs $5 million against the cap. Evan Rodriguez is $2 million against the cap, and the teams that have that salary space are either happy to have it and aren't looking to just add people, or they're not in a position to add guys, or they don't want to make those deals. So I mean, it is as hard as it's described. People don't want to hear it. People are sick of hearing it from Bottrell that it's hard to make a trade, but I mean, it really is. But I mean, I kind of went over it in my analysis of can you trade Zach Bogosian? Like, can you trade? Do you trade him for like a guy that has like 1 or 2 years left on his deal that has that kind of cap hit? People are stressed out about the caps as it is, and that's without looking at a year down the road, extending Dahlin, giving him a max, a big contract, and worrying about what you do with Casey Middlestad and trying to get him figured out, and all these other things that go into it. I think it's a bigger headache than fans care to realize, because they just want the trades, and I don't blame them. The players want the trades too. But it's so hard to make it work, and you're trying to do your best with a roster where you've got guys that don't want to be there anymore, or they just want more minutes, and you don't want to give them those minutes, or they haven't earned those minutes. And it's a hard thing to juggle, but it's the kind of thing where you just have to make do with what you got, and that's a hard spot to be in as a coach, because if you're just making do with guys that you have that may or may not want to be there, you don't want to have that. You don't want to be put in that situation, but this is the spot they're in, and they're trying to make it work. But man, it's so hard when you got, when they played so well with their structure, and, guys stick out when they don't play well in that. And I think Zach's been one of those guys where, if any mistake he's made, or if he wanders away from, his defensive spot, you're just kind of like, where is he going? why is this happening? What the heck is going on? And I think that's where the frustration really builds in for everybody. I would love to have brutal honesty from coaches and other players to say, like, man, I wish this guy or the coach would do this, that, or the other thing. Be able to let me know what the world they think of this, but it's that's not going to happen. So
can we get the miracle?
We'll just have to guess as we watch, as we like to do.
Now, the only question is, as Derek mentioned earlier, will it be possible to get more for Zach Bogosian than Mike Weber? A world waits in pained agony to see the conclusion of this. Well, Joe, thank you so much for taking time here on Monday to talk Sabres hockey with us. Before we let you go, if you want to plug quickly where everyone can find your work, I know The Athletic is a thing a lot of us are aware of, but anything you want to talk about here is your platform. Do with it what you will.
Well, find me at The Athletic. If you haven't subscribed yet, please. I'm not going to beg, but I mean, if you like what you hear, if you like what if you get the teaser paragraph, then hey, sign up. We've always had deals going on and everything, but if you really like to read what I'm writing, then please sign up off of that. And you can find me on Twitter as well at Joe Yerdon. It's JoeYerdon. The 9 easiest letters you can find. So it's so that's where you can find me there, and occasionally on NHL Network and Sirius XM and all kinds of other places, lending my voice and face to the action.
And thanks to Joe Yerdon.
The answer is Alex Zhitnik.
The answer is not. I wish the answer. That'd be amazing.
I tried. Anyways.
I spoiled off the air while we were listening to our playback of that amazing interview with Joe Yerdon. Thanks again to Joe. He is one of the guys who is always willing. We can talk to him anytime we need him, someone to step in. Joe, at the drop of a hat, will jump on the show here. He's done it a number of times, and we really appreciate it. Welcome back to our favorite segment. This is Sabres Plus Minus Trivia. We do this every week here on the podcast, of course. Plus minus is a really shitty stat that doesn't mean anything. But
-42.
Whose line is it anyway? Where the points are made up?
The NHL from the year 1982.
That's actually pretty good.
Basically is from the 82-83 season through the 07-08 season. The NHL had a plus minus trophy that they gave out to whoever had the highest plus minus at the end of every year. The high watermark for that, of course, is Wayne Gretzky, who had a plus 100 in the 84-85 season with the Oilers.
Shocked. It's Wayne Gretzky with a statistical thing.
Who would have thought? That is not the question. In the existence of the trophy, it was won only once by a member of the Buffalo Sabres. Can anyone tell me who it is?
Okay, that would have been amazing if it was Zhitnik.
It's not. It would have. That would have been amazing.
Oh my god.
So it happened once, only done once in that 25-year span. If you can think of who it is and give a rough estimate of what you think the number was that won him that trophy.
What was the ending year?
It's got to be obscure, I feel like.
It's not too obscure.
What
He is a
was the
notable
last
player.
year of it?
The last year they gave it out was 07-08, and the player did not win it in 07-08.
Well, there goes my answer.
It was Pavel Datsyuk in 07-08.
Well, that makes some sense.
Noted Arizona Coyote, Pavel Datsyuk.
Yes.
My answer was a former Coyote and Danny Briere.
It was not Daniel Briere.
Let's see. That's a good question.
Dave Andrechuk.
It was not Dave
That
Andrechuk.
was
Justin is in the right era.
Really?
Justin's right in the right era.
So it's in the 05-06 year.
I would go.
Vanek.
I was going to say Vanek
It was Thomas Vanek.
Oh my goodness.
06-07, Thomas Vanek.
because
Before-
he had
before
that
that,
one
yeah,
breakout year, and he was like a second or third liner.
Now, what do you think the number was that got him this plus-minus trophy?
56.
Lower than
Yes, I was going to guess
I'm going to say
30.
42.
Higher than 42.
Oh,
45.
Slightly higher than 45.
Ooh, slightly higher. We're going to go
86.
Lower.
That's you, Steve. Bye.
Have you played The Price is Right before, Steve?
Slightly higher.
$1, Bob.
47.
47 in 06-07. Thomas Vanek won the NHL Plus Minus Award. He was a plus 47.
What was it called, the award?
It was called the NHL Plus Minus Award.
Nice. A lot of
They
thought
couldn't
into
even name it after anybody.
Gotta love it.
That original
In an
name.
era that calls a trophy the Lady Bing Trophy, they couldn't come up with a name
Well,
for the plus minus.
The thing is, look, with these trophies, you name them after the player who did the
Sure.
best at winning them.
Yeah.
But you can't name the plus minus trophy the Wayne Gretzky trophy because that feels really weird that you picked that
Right.
one specific statistic of his to name a trophy after.
Yeah.
it.
Ooh, do they name one at there at any point? Do they name a trophy at the Wayne Gretzky at any point? What is it?
It's got to be like
No.
it's tough because all those trophies have names. You can't
It's
like
such a
rename
weird-
the
They would have.
overall.
Yeah. Such a weird
They should
thing.
give away a trophy for the most points, like they do the Rocket Richard. Do they give away a trophy for the most points? I feel like they don't.
The Art Ross.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so like you can't rename the Rocket
Neverland.
or the Ross or
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, it's
So you had to like name it like. You have to get
You
the
know
award
what?
every year.
You would have to have a new
I think
award
I got
for
it.
that.
I think I got it. If you lead the league in goals, assists, and points, it's the Wayne Gretzky Trophy.
I think that's fair.
That's good.
I was going to say if you have a really good statistical year and you have a brother who also plays hockey, you get the trophy.
I was going to say, if you're the goaltender with the worst goals against average and the worst save percentage, you win the Wayne Gretzky Award because
You win a free car.
Yeah, everybody scored on you.
You'll
like
need it when you
Wayne
get
Gretzky.
caught and you have to drive yourself around.
Just like a goalie in the 80s, right?
Yeah,
basically.
pretty much.
Yeah.
So that interview with Joe basically wraps up our Sabres segment, at least for now. We do have another show, of course, coming up next week. The Sabres will not have played any hockey since then. Hopefully, we're talking about Jack Eichel winning a brand new car, like Steve talked about before the show. Then we'll talk about Jack Eichel winning the All-Star game for our car.
I definitely didn't say that, but
Does
whoever
anybody know
did,
what kind of
Someone
car it
did
is?
I think you did, to be honest.
No, it was not me.
Probably like a Honda CRV. Yes.
Random take
Call
about
up
the
John
All-Star
Scott.
game is I do like the current format, the 3-on-3, and but
Yeah,
I really,
divisional.
I wish they would keep it that way still. But I loved it when they had the captains draft teams.
Yep.
And they televised it. That was awesome. I wish they
Bill
would do
Kessler
that
just
again.
Drunk Ovi
Huh?
for Drunk Ovi.
Yeah. It was just so fun to watch the
Yeah.
draft. Like it's like a real live fantasy draft and what these players think of their peers. It's kind of fun. It was interesting to watch. I
And
wish
you
they
guys-
would-
Watching the last player be sitting there, just like
Phil Kessler who won a
Phil
free
Kessler,
car,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
You
That's right.
you guys talked about John Scott, and it's funny because if you read his Players Tribune article, he talked about how his wife and he needed the car. Like he didn't make a ton of money.
Yeah,
and
he was an
only
NHL
played,
guy at that
he played in
point.
the NHL for 8 years or whatever, and
He was probably
he has-
making
he has
league
like
minimum.
4 daughters. So he was like, the year that Sid wins the car, he's like, oh great, making $8.7 million a year. He's like, you don't understand. He's like, us winning that car was an actual asset to our family, which was awesome, like absolutely awesome. But anyway,
Yeah, a guy like John Scott's probably making minimum league
think
minimum
he-
every
Veteran
year.
minimum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he did get a pretty good ticket one
at the time of the of the
in-
NHL. Also,
was it in Minnesota?
The AHL contract.
Oh, I don't remember
Who did
that.
he played for Minnesota under who? But he had a coach that really liked him and kind of brought his game up, and I don't know.
Well, the John Scott retrospective
Excuse
will
me.
be a fun future show. We'll do that over the summer for the evergreen portion when the Sabres and Bills both don't exist.
Maybe get him on.
He's got his own podcast. We'll go on his
He's got
podcast.
two.
We'll
go on
I'll
his-
tell you what. I'll do a segment on his
Mutual
podcast, and he can come on our podcast.
Mutual
Seems fair.
interest.
Fair deal. Fair deal.
Dropping the 716 Sports Podcast.
We could interview
his,
him.
his podcast is dropping the glove. So
Yeah.
We could interview him, then he can interview us about interviewing him.
What was it like to talk to me about playing hockey? Well, John knows. Sorry, I can't spoil that whole future interview. That's totally going to happen.
Clairvoyant.
edit this out, producer.
Justin.
Not
you wanna
editing
cut this out. Justin already had to do way more cutting than we've ever done for a single episode of this podcast ever once in our lives. So we'll move
Yeah,
on
I'm just
from
gonna blame me for this one.
Yeah.
I show up
yes.
and problems.
Digression.
We can't even call you the new guy. You've done the show before.
Yeah. And everyone knows who he is, so it's not like
I mean, you say everyone. I'm kind of like an F list, buddy.
Oh, I mean, I appreciate that you think that that's worse than us, but boy howdy, do I have some news for you. Moving on across, staying in the same building, but putting some turf on top of
Yeah.
it. Buffalo, we talked last week with Chris Cloutier about how big of a game it was for the Bandits, how important the game was. You got Toronto coming, and it's a big divisional game. You're all chasing Halifax, and man, that game delivered. That was an incredible game, and the bottom line for it, too, was the Bandits pull out a victory.
So it felt like a rivalry game right out of the gate. It felt like a playoff game as well, but you have Gustafson and Noseworthy pretty early on. So a minute and a half into the game.
Minute 15 in.
Yeah, so a minute 15, there's a dust up behind the net, not involving Noseworthy at all. And a couple guys have a coming together, and the next thing you know, Noseworthy is absolutely pummeling Gustafson. And I mean,
He's a big boy.
it was not close, and this is not being a homer. Noseworthy dropped him, and he was given the instigator and excused from the game because of that penalty, and he's on the hook for an automatic 1-game suspension. But Jeff, you have a perspective that's been kind of bouncing around in the era of social media with video replays and people being able to clip things. You saw it live from your seats that maybe he should have that instigator therefore rescinded, and therefore the 1-game suspension rescinded.
Yeah, and there's a clip that's going around on Bandits Mafia and on Twitter that you can find. He's kind of out of the frame a little bit in that clip, but so my season tickets are right behind the visitors bench, a little closer to the goal at the end of that section. So the fight happened between the net and where my tickets are. And Noseworthy, so there's the first scrap that happens. That's back behind the goal, going away from where we're sitting. Noseworthy is playing offense. They were playing him in transition in this game, and you wonder, like, well, what's this big defenseman rookie doing, playing transition or playing some forward here on his first two shifts? Well, he's the leading point scorer all time for the University of Michigan lacrosse. The guy knows what to do when he's on offense. So he's standing there. Gustafson comes up to him, and I don't know what led to it. I didn't see anything. Noseworthy's out there throwing some screens. He might have bumped Gustafson. Gustafson comes up to him and just grabs him by the face mask. And that only takes a couple seconds. Noseworthy takes this as an invitation and ragdolls him into the boards. And just, as Steve mentioned, he just pounded him. It was not close. Noseworthy is a big, tough guy. And out of all the guys on the floor to pick a fight with, Priolo might still be the guy I would avoid the most. But after that, it is Noseworthy, and especially after watching what he did to Gustafson. To come back to the original point, there's no way you can call that an instigator on Noseworthy. If you want to say that they both get extra roughing minors or whatever for going over the line or grabbing each other or whatever, I don't have a problem with that. You want to give them both 5 and 4 or whatever, but to single out Noseworthy for that fight feels like it is incorrect, and I hope that he gets his game rescinded, because it would be a shame for him he missed almost the entire game too, because this happened 75 seconds into the game. He missed the entire game Saturday, basically. To give another game suspension to him feels like it would be a massive oversight.
Yeah, we'll see if they discipline will be handed down at the end of the week, so we'll get the email, and it'll tell us if they've adjusted any discipline or if it'll hold up. We'll see if there's an appeal. We'll see how that process goes for that. But out of the gate, it kind of felt like that kind of game, and I think it was Toronto built a 3-1 lead. Why am I having a bad memory of this?
Toronto built a 3-1 lead.
Yeah, so Toronto builds a 3-1 lead. Buffalo manages to tie it up, and then Buffalo kind of went on a little bit of a run. I think they had a 6-goal second quarter.
Yeah, and it was 3-1 Toronto. Buffalo gets 7 goals going into halftime. It's 7-5 at halftime. I feel like that was the score that it was, and the goals are scoring goals is fantastic. But I want to think about the quality of goals here for a little bit, because the quality of goal that they were scoring offensively, the offense last home game against Halifax, offense was anemic. They were missing everything. They couldn't get the ball. They were turning it over, taking terrible shots. Both Chase, Frazier, and again, if you haven't checked it out, you can
podcast karma.
Yeah,
let's just be real.
This is, by the way, guys, 2 home games in a row that the guy you had on between 2 posts scored the first goal for the Bandits. Not saying that's why, but it didn't hurt. Chase gets a hat trick, and they were all just beautiful goals, jumping through the air, throwing nice casual little backhands into I don't think Nick Rose still knows where that ball went. He was standing there the whole time casually waiting for Chase to spin around and shoot, and it was already in the back of the net, and Chase turns to the crowd, and then Burnsy, Hollywood, as he's known on this podcast, I believe, Airburn, with a couple of beautiful diving goals. One that I don't think he and Dane could have pointed for the challenge flag any faster on that one that he towed the line. He was barely to his feet when he was asking JT to throw the flag. And then the penalty shot goal too, where
Rosie got about 80% of that.
Yeah, but he did exactly what he needed to do, because Rose is a big guy. He takes up a lot of the space in the goal mouth, and all he had to do was square himself there. He gave Josh one little area. Josh had to basically jump left, kind of gave a little bit of a Forsberg move, kind of moved his momentum left, kept his stick right, and kind of tucked it in on that far side. And the quality of goal that was scored in that game, maybe everything except for the empty netter, was a really well-designed, perfect play for the offense. It was a really, really well-played game by both teams, to give Toronto the credit.
My favorite part about that second Chase goal was that goalie Rose's reaction.
When he realized it was in.
He just stood there, didn't see it, and then realized it was in, and was like, was he mad? He's like, well.
Nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, fuck it. That was pretty good.
And Frazier's first goal, JT called him out. He said, it was a really good goal. I still asked him why he decided to go with the 2 inches of room on the short side when the entire far side of the net was open. He's like, it was quite a highlight reel goal. He's like, I'm not quite sure why he opted to go where there was barely any room when the other side of the net was wide open. But you know what? He has a flair he called him a flashy player, but he said he's one of the hardest workers and a kid that he's always glad to have on his team. So it was good to see Frazier have a breakeout game.
You know what? A move like that is the unexpected move, though.
Yeah.
I just said in our interview, hard and low, hard and low.
Hard and low, hard and low. He said that 20% of his 139 shots were on net. So if you take 139 shots and 35 of them end up on net, you are benched. You are not
almost
seeing it, you are not. I was going to say I could hit the net more than 20%. I think I could hit the net more than 20% of the time. I'm a decent enough lacrosse player. I've never played formal.
Just hitting the net doesn't mean you're taking good shots. Hitting the net is
Correct.
just, the goalie made a save. Okay.
Right. He's out here saying that he missed 80% of his shots went wide. He doesn't mean in the net. He said that 80%. He's like, I'm like, you took 139 shots. He's like, 20% were on net. I'm like, no, 20% went in. That was his shooting percentage last year, like 20.9%.
Well, he's pretty good. He knew a shooting percentage. Just like, I don't know what that means, but it means I'm scoring on 20% of these or something. So.
Yeah. Which makes sense.
He just saying a goalie never stopped the shot he took.
He had like 24 goals last year and 109 shots. So that makes sense that he's about 20%. So you mentioned then the game, the Bandits had, it was 7-5 at the half. You're correct. It was 8-7 at the end of the 8-6 at the end of the third. Sorry, 8-6. And then all of a sudden, Rob Hellier. So we saw this last year. And interestingly enough, I don't claim to know a ton about lacrosse. Maybe
you know some.
I know a few things, and Troy accordingly, but little humble brag on myself, always tells me you do know about it. You've been around it a long time. So I went into his box. So he sits in the GM box where normally Chugger would sit. Now Chugger's on the bench, and where Bottrell sits for Sabres games. So I walked in there. Troy and I have a very good relationship. He's been the coach of the team for 6 years. He's been a scout now for 2 years. I text him happy birthdays, that kind of stuff. We have a good relationship. So I walked in the box and I said to him, I'm like, the Rock offense is so one-dimensional. I'm like, no one wants the ball. They want to feed it to Hellier. And he scored 4 of the first 6 goals, so it's not a bad idea. Jeff, you might remember the first Toronto game last year when Adam Jones wasn't in the lineup. The ball went to the right side of the floor. Hellier and Schreiber played catch. That was it. They had Paulus on the left side. Nothing happened with him. Like, it was all coming from the right side. Then Adam Jones came into the lineup, and Toronto beat Buffalo because all of a sudden it felt like they had a dynamic scorer on both sides of the floor. Well, Schreiber and Jones both on IR, and literally it felt like Toronto's entire offense was one-dimensional. It was like the Hey Arnold episode. We get the ball and we give it to Tucker. They just get the ball, give it to Hellier every time because there was no one wanted the ball. You're watching these players just looking to get rid of it.
And the difference, too, is not only was Jonesy not active, but Schreiber was also not active for the game.
Both on
so
IR,
it was literally just Rob Hellier. And I think they gave him 6 or 7 open shots in that whole game, and he buried 5 of them.
Yep.
And at least from where I was sitting, there was not a whole lot Vino could have done on most of them. He was putting them perfectly up in the corner, just ripping them.
I think the one that Vino would want back was the tying goal.
Yeah.
So Hellier squared up in front of the net from the restraining line, and he lets fly and beat Vino clean.
That was a heat check goal for Hellier.
Yeah, and that made it 8-8, and it was like, oh my goodness. And then who scores the game-winning goal? Chris Cloutier.
Little clutch goal, Klutch, if you will.
So he can yell at me if he listens to this and wants to. Justin, we were watching him in the morning. The boys have to score a goal to get off the floor. And Klutch kept missing the net to the point where he was literally throwing his stick because he could not hit the net, and he was really frustrated. So when he scored that goal, I felt so... He didn't take a lot of shots during the game. No. But when he buried that one and it was such a big goal, I was so happy for him because we've all had days where you feel like you're fighting it, whatever it might be, and it seemed like he was having one of those days. So for him to get that big goal was huge.
I have 2 other things I noticed from the game. Garrett Billings, the newest Bandit now. This has all happened since the last time we were even here together. Steve kind of caught wind of it early, but it was the next day that Garrett Billings, who's a big name if you're a fan of box lacrosse, is now the newest member of the Bandits, gets signed, practices, and starts on Saturday, all within just a number of days here. So a pretty quick turnaround for him. He was on the floor. He didn't factor in the goals. He did hit at least 1 post.
He had an assist, too.
Did he have an assist? Okay,
yes,
perfect.
He did.
So he gets his first point as a Bandit. You could tell he's still getting back into full offense shape here and trying to get used to, too. The other big part of it is these are guys he hasn't played with before in a lot of cases either, so he's got to get used to playing with all these guys.
He said after the game he had 2 goals coming in. 1, to make a contribution, which he feels like he did with the assist, and 2 was to get a win. So he was like, both boxes were checked today. That was the 2 main goals. He did say as much cardio as he's been doing, there were some family things going on that up until December he wasn't sure he was going to play this year. He's only 32, but had a major knee injury. Apparently was battling some other lower body injury, maybe as a result of the knee injury. Was the comeback player of the year last year with 83 points in San Diego. I didn't realize that he hung up.
He was
over 4 points a game. Like he was absolutely feasting in San Diego. So you bring in a 32-year-old guy, which is a great age in my opinion, and you bring in a guy who has been a 100-point scorer multiple times, who scored 83 points last year, and he claims to be fully healthy. Why wouldn't you sign this guy? Like, it's crazy to think that he was available because...
It does feel weird that San Diego still gets a comp pick out of that. But
They did not send him a qualifying offer.
Ooh, okay.
So I learned, so that's behind the curtain, guys, that San Diego, for whatever reason, ego, pride, did not give him a qualifying.
Really?
All they would have had to do was offer him league minimum. and they would get a compensatory pick based on his performance this year.
I took that as such a slam dunk that I just assumed they were getting it. Wow.
Nothing. They did not offer him a contract.
Wah, wah.
The other last takeaway that I have, at least personally, is the performance of the defense and how much having your captain back in the middle fix some communication issues. And I think JT would agree, because the heavyweight player of the game was Justin Martin, who was a guy who was not, he's not filling up the stat sheet, but he had a lot of big assignments. He was the guy who had to rotate out on Hellier a lot. He had a huge shot block late in that game. But guys, Brownell, Harnett, Priolo, DeSnew, those were big performances, keeping as much of that offense limited as they could. And I think the offense gets to put the empty netter in. We get to talk about Byrne and Frazier's goals. But I think the defense was a huge part, maybe the biggest part of that game.
So we talked about three goals after the first for Toronto, 5 at the half, and then you only end up giving up 8. So as the game went on, you literally gave up less and less, which is great. Harnett soaked a shot and limped off the floor and did not come back. And I asked after the game, I asked JT, is he hurt? Is he okay? And he said, I don't know. He said, all the defense did a really good job blocking shots. They're all probably banged up. And I was like, so confirming, is Harnett hurt or is he okay? He's like, I don't know. I haven't heard. And he just kind of gave me a look. So I hope he's okay, because he did limp off the floor. He blocked that one shot with his leg. I don't know if you saw it. He immediately hobbled. It happened right at the restraining line. It would have been the opposite end of the floor where your seats are. And he soaked a shot in his knee or leg. And he didn't fall to the ground, but he immediately hobbled off the floor without putting much weight on it and went down the tunnel and did not return. And if I remember right, that was in the first half. So I think he's dinged up. So as the Bandits
I did notice Weiser getting a lot more defensive shifts after that.
As the Bandits head out to Colorado, we'll see if that makes room for Minichiello to come back and play, or someone else to slot in on defense. If
I really liked Minichiello's game the last home game that they played up here, and curious too, of course, now suspension looming, maybe Noseworthy plays more defense in that game too.
Yes, definitely a possibility. So, and you have Bridal available to play offense if Noseworthy takes Harnett's spot and you activate Bridal or something like that. That's always an option as well. So the Bandits head to Colorado this Saturday. They'll play in Colorado against the Mammoth, and then they will return home on the 31st. Friday, the 31st, there is their next home game.
And it's another big conference matchup, divisional matchup. My apologies. The new Rochester Nighthawks meet the Nighthawks, different than your parents' Nighthawks.
Yes.
But it looks like they figured some stuff out
because
there.
Because your parents' Nighthawks are in Halifax, just pounding people,
stomping
just
people.
Absolutely owning people. But anyways, but yes, so we'll see. Rochester did get a win this weekend, though. So New York got a win thanks to Dan McRae with a big goal. New York was losing by 5 and found a way to come back.
What's wrong with? Well, we can talk about this another time. But man, Georgia has to figure some stuff out.
They look lost in the water right now.
Really lost.
They're lost in the sauce for sure.
So we'll
the Bandits might have broken them. I don't know. Just kidding, but
so we'll try to maybe grab a player or someone to talk about the game coming up here next Monday, and hopefully they'll be doing so on the heels of a big team win at Colorado, an early season road trip. It's weird with the double bye.
They've played
and
3 games.
Yeah,
they've played 3 games.
Second road game.
Their first game was December 7th, and they've played 3 games. 4 games.
What the hell?
4 games.
Double bye, holiday, and then a single bye, and now they're finally getting into a stretch where they're playing every single week because they played at Georgia, now home, now at Colorado, then home again.
They said it feels a bit normal. They're all happy with it.
Yeah.
Chase said it was nice because he wasn't playing. He's like, I missed 7 weeks and only missed 3 games.
You could tell how happy he was to be back in front of the Bandits
he
fans at home,
because
he was trying to chase down every loose ball, chase down every guy carrying the ball at the floor at the end of every offensive shift in that first half. He wanted every single goal, and it was good to see him back too from a fan perspective.
He got a good warm up in running backwards against me and dusting me.
Yeah, go see your pinned tweets. Check it out. It was actually a very funny video. I was laughing my ass off while we were recording it.
It's such an easy team to be a fan of because of how just funny and genuinely good guys these players are. And I think the video does a really good job of showcasing the personality of Chase, who's you can tell he's one of the most beloved Bandits players too. Everyone asking all the time what his status was. He got a huge ovation when he came back for the starting lineup, and it's good to see him back and moving really well and everything too after that injury.
So there was football this weekend.
There was.
So we're going to see the 49ers versus the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And that means one thing. Bills fans are saying, why the fuck didn't we draft Patrick Mahomes more than ever before? All over my Twitter timeline, our Twitter timeline, it's all I see is the hindsight 2020. We should have picked Mahomes, blah, 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 blah. I'm tired of seeing it. I'm tired of hearing about it. I know a lot of us have takes on it. Hindsight is a fun thing, right?
Hindsight is 2020.
Yeah, it's fun when it's different when you're Patrick Mahomes and you come into Andy Reid and Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt and Travis Kelce. Right, the Bills take this guy. He's gonna come into fucking who? Like,
let's see. You
Zay
got
Jones.
the
Jones.
roster
Charles
right now.
Clay.
Charles Clay,
Don't forget Kalen
Clay, like
Zay Jones, Nick O'Leary,
Clay, jeez.
Kelvin Benjamin. I want to start
Patrick
this
DeMarco.
part of the show off by saying two things. And I'm just going to put my microphone down and listen to you all be mad about it. Patrick Mahomes is better than Josh Allen. And it doesn't matter because even if the Bills had Patrick Mahomes and didn't make the trade, it still wouldn't have made them good.
I agree.
I don't know if Mahomes would still be here because I don't think he would have been as good, and his 3 years would have been up, and he'd have been. I'm not.
I mean, aren't people making one huge assumption here?
Yeah.
That the Bills would have drafted Mahomes with that draft pick?
Actually, there were reports that they were interested in him and Trubisky, but yeah,
Trubisky?
Could you imagine that?
It would have fit right in. That's a very Bills quarterback right there.
Yeah, no, but honestly, I'm going to go last. I'm going to get very angry here. So
I like it.
It's just like
Instead of unleash the
I
Kraken,
don't
we're
think
going to
it's
unleash the
unreasonable
Kramer.
now.
actually, you know what? Here we go. Release the Kraken.
Yeah.
Yo, go.
Leroy Jenkins. Fuck you, and fuck you all. Okay,
You need a new
so
count, Andy.
listen, Patrick Mahomes is basically football Jesus at this point. He is Conor McGregor except quarterback. He's in a tier of his own. He's a god on the football field. There's nobody else like him. That said, if he comes to Buffalo, yes, he's probably still that good. Why? Football Jesus. He's just got the talent. You either have it or you don't sometimes with quarterbacks, and it looks like Patrick Mahomes has, well, what is it? Well, it's apparently being God. So I hate that mentality of, he would have never been good with Buffalo. Yes, coming into the system that he has with Andy Reid, who is a genius offensively, and having playmakers like Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt before he got stupid, and players like that and Travis Kelce. But the biggest thing is, Patrick Mahomes, until this year, his first year as a starter, he had a butthole defense that kept the Patriots waltzing into the end zone. And they allowed him to go there. Keep going,
And then they roughed the passer, quote unquote, and they jumped off sides and gave the Patriots chance after chance.
But my big thing is that Patrick Mahomes still would be, the Bills would be in the Super Bowl if they had Patrick Mahomes. Simple as that. He's that good. That said, can someone just spill a bunch of Legos onto the hallway? Because I'd rather deal with that than having to deal with another person saying the Bills are at fault for not taking Patrick Mahomes. The Bills are, to blame for not taking Patrick Mahomes. They screwed up by not taking Patrick Mahomes. First off, duh. Really? What a take. They didn't take the best quarterback in the NFL, so of course everyone's going to look bad there.
I mean, that's true. They did not draft Drew Brees, so that is correct.
If anybody had an inkling as to what Patrick Mahomes would be right now, the Chiefs would have traded up to second overall.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs took him at 11th overall, so not only did the Bills not take him at 11, supposedly, the 10 teams that took ahead of him, including multiple teams that also took quarterbacks.
Yes.
And ranked Trubisky or Watson or whoever these guys are ahead of Mahomes, or didn't trade up to 10 to jump Kansas City, or didn't offer Buffalo more than Kansas City paid the Bills. I mean, hindsight in this is so significant because,
because the NFL is butthole at scouting quarterbacks.
It's terrible.
That's what they, everything about it. I mean, it's an imperfect science. I told you guys I'm going to get angry.
No, you're good.
Oh, my God.
Get angry.
So, it's an imperfect science. If anybody knew what Patrick Mahomes was going to be, they would have traded the first overall for all I know. And the other thing about this is, what helps soften the damn blow here? Trey White. Deion Dawkins and Tremaine Edmonds were parts of the trade package that happened. They got 3 really core integral pieces because football is still a team game. Mm-hmm. Having the greatest quarterback probably helps. I just said it. Mahomes with the Bills, they'd be in the Super Bowl right now. But that said, none of this matters if Josh Allen is even just good. I'm not even saying elite. I'm just saying good. Fucking competent. That's all I need Josh Allen to be at this point in order for this to be a good team that is a Super Bowl threat. Holy hell.
So you don't think Josh Allen's good?
I think he could be just fine. I genuinely think
that's a whole can of worms
with my heart of hearts, I do think Josh Allen could be that. He is not the parody of a prospect that he was supposedly said to be. He is not going to be out of the league in 2 years like many pundits said he was going to be. Again, quarterback scouting, roll the dice, see what you get.
I mean, to your point about quarterback scouting, look at the 4 quarterbacks who played in the championship games. You have Mahomes, who's taken 11th. A lot of teams passed on him. Bills traded down. Chiefs take the spot. He's playing against Ryan Tannehill, who is a converted wide receiver to quarterback.
Tight end.
And then given up on by the Dolphins before the season, signs as a backup. He was passed on by many
nonetheless,
teams.
though.
Jimmy Garoppolo, not a first-round quarterback from a small school.
Who threw 8 passes?
I mean, it works. Yeah, we got the Raheem Mostert game.
Damn it.
And then you have Aaron Rodgers, who is one of the, again, if you want to talk about one of the other guys you might think is the best quarterback in the NFL, Aaron Rodgers went 24th in the first round. Teams passed on him and passed on him and passed on him and passed on him. Like,
And didn't he go in the draft the Bills picked up drafted Lossman?
The year before was Lossman.
Oh, year before was
I mean,
Lossman?
I'm more mad to this day about Terrell Troop over
Brady
Gronk than I will
Quinn.
ever be about the Patrick Mahomes trade.
Yeah, Brady Quinn was
The other factor of this too that you mentioned with the pieces is I will almost never be mad at my team for trading down ever.
Yeah.
Because when you talk about rolling the dice, I'd rather roll the dice with 3 chances to get snake eyes than 1.
And they basically hit on every single player they got, too.
Correct.
Yeah, and they've hit well.
Edmonds, White, Allen, and Dawkins for Mahomes at the time. And no one, and if anyone thought Mahomes was going to be that good, he would have went first.
Yes.
Yep. People thought he had the potential because he's got a crazy arm, but I don't think anyone thought that he would develop to be quite as good as he is quite this quickly.
This team has missed on so many draft picks. I'm not ready to be angry at them over the Mahomes situation because of what they drafted.
A lot of the takes his draft year were the exact same as what Josh Allen's were. Very long project quarterback, poor mechanics,
high risk,
inaccurate, high risk.
ESPN's giving him like a C minus draft grade for trading up and taking him. Like, no one thought he was going to be good except for maybe Kansas City. Maybe Kansas City saw a little something and thought it was worth rolling the dice.
Let's be honest, he went into a perfect situation with Andy Reid as quarterback guru. Alex Smith wasn't good at NFL quarterback till he fell on Andy Reid.
You know, I would say Patrick Mahomes isn't throwing 50 touchdowns if he's with anyone other than Andy Reid, but he's still the best quarterback in the NFL at that point.
When it comes into all those playmakers,
it helps. It helps, but I still think it's you got it or you don't. I truly am a proponent of that. He's got more than it. So the thing is that we're seeing it right now with these conference championship games. How did these teams get here? We are leaving the era of elite quarterback equals automatic conference championship berth. You saw the Titans with Derrick Henry have to just run roughshod over teams to just annihilate Tom Brady and Lamar Jackson. Okay, sweet. You have the NFL MVP, presumably, of this year, and the ageless wonder who finally taking a step back a little bit in his capabilities. Now you get yourself another one. What's on the other side? The San Francisco 49ers, who, again, may I reiterate, needed 8 stupid passes, also known as twice as many as Pat Mahomes' touchdowns.
Yeah.
He threw passes, attempted forward throwing of the football. Who are you guys, Navy?
Sid Luckman will be so proud.
Get the hell out of here. I hate everything about the San Francisco 49ers right now because of the fact that they needed only 8 forward passes like your Navy
to win by a lot.
To skunk the Packers.
Yes.
They skunked them. Mm-hmm. They destroyed them and their dreams and maybe even their children.
Yeah, that game was basically over at halftime.
It was
good until the coin toss.
We're leaving the era of elite quarterback equals automatic conference championship. It's not going to be the same anymore.
Well, I mean, at this point, it's just you have to have a good quarterback. You have to have a competent play caller who's able to run the offense. It's become the era of the offense and the era of building good weapons around the right quarterback.
And that's what it is. It's the era of the offense, not necessarily the quarterback. That said, elite defenses helped some of those teams get to where they had to be this year. The Ravens were the top team in the NFL in the regular season. They had a sneaky good defense that was in the top 5. The 49ers, the Patriots, the Bills, playoff teams automatically because of how great their defenses were this year. The Bears are a team that you can't count out despite the fact that Mitch Trubisky decides, you know what? Nah, I don't like being a good quarterback. So we're just going to just tank the season here. They still had almost a winning record. I think they finished 8-8. Despite Trubisky, despite Matt Nagy going, you know what, I'm going to run it 4 times on 1st and goal at the 1 because I don't trust Trubisky anymore. So it's team building. And I think that the biggest part about this that pisses me off with Patrick Mahomes is this. They weren't taking a quarterback that year because they did not have the front office that was going to be in synergy with the coach and in synergy with the owner. Why get the biggest piece that you need for your offense when you don't have the entire staff together yet? It wasn't happening. It was not happening at all. They wanted synergy first, and I do not blame them for a single second for it. They wanted a shared vision so that they know that they can attack not just the quarterback position, but everything else that a team-based game needs in order for you to succeed long-term in the NFL. You want to go ahead and have me trust Doug Whaley to make the stupid right pick on this one? Go to hell. Go right to hell.
Selector of E.J. Manuel.
Yeah, that
noted quarterback
that
talent.
freaking
evaluator.
guy.
It was Buddy Nix, right?
He took E.J. Manuel 16, but
To be fair-
11.
To be fair, McDermott has his flaw. Nathan Peterman, they tried to push that like a legitimate thing. So fine, I'll give you that.
That's a whole other can of worms.
Oh man, we've gone full circle back to Steve's first show. We brought Steve in for the podcast the day before they benched Tyrod for Peterman.
God. So it just, but again, there's a flaw there, of course, and I'm not going to go ahead and say all these things and then ignore that part. Like that was a real thing that happened. But again, they wanted a shared vision. Before they can get that, there was this god quarterback that nobody knew would be a god.
Now
I hate everything.
I've got 2 questions. Do you think that they were either not ready to move on from Tyrod or keeping him as a bridge until they got that synergy? And do you think there's a chance that Mahomes gets to, 7 Super Bowls that Brady has?
No.
Yes.
9.
Yes to your
9,
first
right?
question. I think they were keeping Tyrod around exactly for that reason because they were paying him a very cheap salary for quarterbacks, especially ones that were competent.
Yeah.
And to get to 8 actually, right? Because he
9.
lost 2. 9.
I'm sorry,
9.
wins.
Oh, okay. So 6 wins. No, that's such a hard task to have in a team-based game where even as great as he is, you've seen the Kansas City defense just prolapse sometimes and straight up stop him from getting to a Super Bowl in his first season as a starter. You see Andy Reid, who is notoriously bad at playoff games
And clock management.
He's got a reputation for that, unfortunately. And I think Patrick Mahomes might actually save Andy Reid's reputation at this point. But to win 6 Super Bowls, that's something we're not going to see for a very long time.
I mean,
And if I'm wrong, go ahead and just find me at the end of Patrick Mahomes' career and just kick me in the balls.
yeah, this argument's only going to get the better he does, the more this gets brought up forever and ever.
Kind of the same thing with
I
O'Reilly.
hate myself.
The more success the Blues and O'Reilly have, this will just keep coming back too.
I think it's more of an argument to have with O'Reilly than it is with Mahomes.
If O'Reilly,
Because you had O'Reilly.
Because you had the guy.
Yeah, that's
you
true.
know?
yeah, that one. You had the guy. You traded the person.
Right.
Whereas with the Bills, they traded the pick that they
you
just so
traded the
happened.
concept.
You traded the spot that they
Good way to
just
put it.
so happened to select the player.
Yeah.
You did not have the player. Of course, that makes the O'Reilly thing worse. It's just the Chiefs could have done a lot of things with that pick. They had Alex Smith. They could have done a lot of things with that pick. They took a quarterback that just so happens to be the best one in the NFL right now.
Well, welcome to the show, Derek Kramer,
Yeah.
who broke the single show fuck record.
That's definitely not true, by the way.
The single show.
that was like 6 in a row.
The single sentence fuck record for sure.
the single
that's pretty
show
solid.
decibel
Look,
record.
man, I'm Kyle Poso. This guy fucks over here. All right?
Single show decibel record, and also the first use of the word prolapse on our show of all time.
What can I say? I've got a way of words here. I'm a wordsmith.
So now 13 days
Fuck.
from now, Kansas City, San Francisco, and the Super Bowl. We'll talk about that more next week because we got another full show before.
And I hate
They're
the
going to play the
49ers.
Pro Bowl next week. That's a big football game. Play the old Pro Bowl. Everyone likes the Pro Bowl. It's the worst All-Star game of all the major sports.
The
It's
NHL
not
might
close.
have something to say about this at this point.
I love the
Trey
NHL All-Star
White
game.
and
Yeah,
Jermaine
3-on-3
Evans
is
are in
good.
that game. Were part of that trade.
And now Andre Roberts got brought in too.
Yeah,
right?
you know who's not in that Pro Bowl? Patrick Mahomes. Won the trade, bitches.
There we go. We found
Not a
it.
Pro Bowler. Hate to see it. 0 for 2. Oh, man.
I just won the argument with using the Pro Bowl.
It's a very valid statistic. They put it on the. Hey, when they
It's
get
the
when
equivalent
people
of
go to the Hall of Fame, they're like,
plus
"Oh, he's a 10-time Pro Bowler." It's like, does that mean he never played in the Super Bowl? Joe Thomas, big-time Pro Bowler because his team's never made the playoffs.
Well, the Pro Bowl used to be after the Super Bowl.
Used to, yeah.
Yes, it did.
It's still
weekend.
And it also used to be in Hawaii, which is probably a lot nicer to
Yeah.
go to on vacation than Orlando.
100% be like 2 weeks.
Hey
after the
guys,
Super Bowl.
great job in the season. You're going to Orlando.
Yes.
How pro will take? They should get rid of the game altogether and have a skills competition.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, at least they're still doing that now. The skills comp is fun now. They do that.
Yeah, that is true that they
was
brought
fun
that sort
last
of
year.
thing. Back in the day, that was like one
That
of the
was
coolest
so
things.
good.
The quarterback
quarterback
competition.
Watching them hit a
They
fucking,
made an entire video game off of that.
That was great.
you literally watch these quarterbacks at 50 yards with a moving target.
Jake
just
Plummer trying to hit a moving
dropping 'em in
target
buckets.
that is just back and forth, and he's just got to hit this thing with chalked footballs. Just bang.
right in.
We got a great article on the website from 4 years ago. We wrote on it last time. But
What we should do with the Pro Bowl? Yeah. People hated that article.
that was great.
I know because I wrote it.
Quarterback dodgeball.
Yes.
Quarterback. Oh God, Josh
Someone
Allen
would
versus
die.
Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes
Someone would
versus
die.
literally everybody.
I just
Someone
want a
would die.
quarterback distance throwing competition. We do like the javelin, but with footballs. Like let quarterbacks get a 5-yard running start and just chuck a
Hey,
football.
They work it toward footballs. Like first, it's like a tennis ball, and he just launches into the stratosphere.
Tennis balls are so hard to throw because they're like hollow. I
think it was
I
this
feel
way.
like they do it.
I think because the NFL skills competition, I mean, you don't bring in the actual like people that like the best players.
Do
in the
Joes
league.
versus pros.
That was a great show, by the way.
Was
But people who like the NBA dunk competition, they don't select actual all stars. They pick the best dunkers in the league. They pick the best, the best
Yeah.
of one skill and have a competition. That'd be way better.
You know what'd be
than
cool?
the Pro Bowl because no one wants
Duck hunt.
No one plays. No
You
one's
throw,
gonna hurt in that
you
game.
throw targets in the air, and the quarterbacks just have to hit them.
Yes.
There you go.
And then for every target you hit, a dog just shows up, and you get the sound. Yes.
And if you miss them all, the dog shows up and laughs at you.
No, the dog's just walking, and everybody just laughs at you.
I can't wait to the podcast combine. We're totally going to do this year. We talked about doing it last year. I can't wait to
my
find out what
God.
my 40 time is. We'll do that for
Well,
sure.
we got my. Wait, that would be.
Was anyone timing me on Saturday? Because I was.
No, we'll give you
Yes,
a redo.
it
We'll give
has-
you a redo.
My stopwatch is still going. By the way,
I've got to say, I've got a nice swear time.
Yeah.
there you go.
I almost said a different phrase for that, and that would have been so much worse.
we have events planned. We'll
We'll get as we get towards March and April here. We'll dig into that. Justin and I have had a conversation. I think we're excited about
It's
it.
been
so.
an idea in the works about 2 years.
Yeah, we just never actually do it. So this
brilliant.
this
Send
year
it.
we're going to actually do it. I'm excited about it.
Sounds brilliant. Send it. Let's go.
We'll do. So thank you all for listening. This feels like a natural ending point for the show. We've got some stuff we didn't talk about. We can always get to that next week. You can find this podcast and other great podcasts and or less great podcasts that we have also made on our multiple social media sites. We're on Facebook at 716 Sports Podcast, on Twitter at 716 Sport Podcast. We are found on Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean, whatever it is that provides you the podcast that you listen to during your day. Welcome to Derek, and thank you for joining us. Hope we didn't scare you off too quickly for your first regular show.
I think I'm well entrenched now with.
Yeah, now that you've ranted, you're safe to.
Yeah,
integrate
I
yourself.
think that I hope I didn't scare you guys. Oh, this guy's a kind of killer. So we might want to get rid of him, guys.
We'll see.
Yeah, well, that's
He set way too many records in his first appearance on a regular basis.
One of two things will happen: either Justin will email you a pink slip, or we'll invite you to the Slack chat, and that'll really tell you how things are going to go for next week. So thanks to Derek, Justin, Mike,
We tell
Steve.
Derek we're recording on location, and we don't.
We just don't show up.
Hey guys, where are you?
We're recording on this
The
abandoned pier.
9th green at 9 p.m.
We'll record at the bowling alley next week. We'll see you all here next week, recapping the All-Star Game, the Pro Bowl, and we'll talk some. Well, it'll be a great show. There'll be a lot of
Preview
variety.
Sabres Senators.
Preview Sabres Senators. We'll see you next Monday.